Ja.
16:10 Uhr, passt doch.
16:10 Uhr. Almost. Well, almost 10 minutes late as always. Anyhow, welcome back to, what is it, episode? I don't know. One of those.
31?
No
31?
idea.
No,
31,
I don't know. 31, yeah, probably. Anyhow, yeah, welcome back to another freshly squeezed episode of PKs on Air. We have guests, or a guest, I guess, not guests, but yeah, it's not only me, it's not only Dominique, it's actually none other than Paul joining us today. Very happy to have you back.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me participate in this PKs on Air once again. I think it's my third episode already.
Yeah.
So always with the latest and most, let's say, trending topics here in the world of Facebook advertising and social advertising.
Yeah, give us like the 30-second sneak peek. What are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, today, and I think the timing is basically perfect, the Apple iOS 14.5 update. So we are talking about the impact when it comes to especially performance marketing. And we will talk about how it works in very simple words. We will talk about the solutions you can take currently and maybe in the next some days. And we will, let's say, discuss some of the trending posts and articles from some online magazines, where I also want to share, let's say, some personal and some professional opinion about that.
I'm going to be curious if that's a different one, like the personal versus the fair enough.
It's definitely a different one, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's going to be good. So before we get into it, quick kind of housekeeping and some other things. Seems that for whatever reason we do have some issues with LinkedIn, so we're trying to fix that. Meanwhile, if not, then well, it is what it is. So you get it reposted afterwards. Also, last week we had some comments on delays and a bit of lags on the Twitter stream, mainly because of Periscope. So if you are watching from there, then and we're going to repost it, or we actually try to change the posting. Actually, maybe you switch to YouTube or Facebook or wherever. That seems to work better. We don't really know what it causes, but yeah. Either way, feel free to jump in onto the comments. That's also good because, we try to kind of keep an eye on them. If you have any questions for Paul, that's definitely welcome. And we also kind of have a bit of kind of a wrap up that we're going to post during the show because the team went kind of through summarizing some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today. We're going to also share the slides. So if you are watching this later, and you want to kind of follow up or just poke around as always, and that's true also for the other episodes, pa.ag/notes is where you can find like all the previous kind of recaps, slide decks if we have them, as well as sometimes kind of additional links, especially when we do like those recap, monthly recap situations where there's just a lot of different articles being discussed. We also kind of dump the links that Paul mentioned into the blog post. So you can just do it kind of afterwards, whatever you prefer. So before we jump in, Dominique, what's the schedule look like for the up and coming weeks? So, I mean, today we have a bit of a different topic, obviously, with social and tracking related topics. What else is on the agenda?
So for next week, we will have a special guest.
We do.
Can we announce it already?
I guess so. Go for it.
Okay. So next week, the awesome Izzy Smith will join us here at PKs on Air. So the topic is still kind of a secret, I guess. So
I'm not sure if that's a secret, but like if you say so, then it's going to be SEO, right? So it's going to be SEO. I'm quite sure. So.
It's going to be definitely SEO, of course.
Right.
So I think we will announce the topic of next week's episode during the next days, latest by Friday, I guess.
Yep.
And the week after, let me check. It's the 23rd. There we will have a content marketing topic again finally.
Yeah.
And I think it will be about B2B content marketing, or the role of content marketing in the field of B2B. Exactly, and how which kind of formats works best in the field of B2B compared to B2C brands and companies. Yeah, so very interesting month.
Right, sounds good.
Yeah.
So before we get into this, and I'm not going to ask you about your book reading habits anymore, I just gave up. Paul, what's your favorite book these days?
I need to mention this, recommended by Julia, our colleague, head of PPC.
Yeah,
I started reading Atomic Habits, and
Atomic Habits,
I have to admit, I really like it. And funny thing is, another friend recommended me another book. Which was it again? But in the first page, the author of this book has recommended Atomic Habits again. So it feels like I read the connection of books, which is very, very interesting. But I forgot the other book. It was a good one. I remember that. I always get those titles.
Fair enough. I see. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So that said, maybe one other very quick thing. I think there's. Then we get straight into tracking. There's a lot of people still like dialing in. So just leave your comments if you wanna kind of deep dive into anything specific on kind of social advertisement, I'd say probably in general, but also if you have any specific questions. Some stuff I think is also very, very new. Might be that we do not have an answer, but we kind of try to come up with one. And if not, then I think Paul and team will just follow up afterwards. So either way works. So Paul, you put together a couple of slides I've seen, so I'll just bring them up to the screen and then let's get going.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so let's jump right into the next slide. The main question is actually what is going to happen. And first of all, you need to know what is your current iOS update or version. And on most devices, if you have your, let's say, iPad iOS, which means iPhone basically mostly, also the iPod probably, yeah, and your TV OS updated, it will be the version 14.4. So the next version that is going to be released, except they create version 14.4.1 and 2 and once more again, is very, very likely to be the version that is basically asking for more general tracking permission of all users. And this is, let's say, postponed some days, maybe even weeks already, because it was said it's the update that is going to be published at the end of 2020. So now then it was said it's in January 2021. Now we already have February. So we believe in one of the next days it's basically going to happen. And a spoiler alert, in Canada there is already a rollout. So there are people already having the 14.5 version on their phones. So it depends, of course, on your location, on your region, because the rollout is usually not worldwide during one single day. It's likely that you maybe have it or will very soon have the updated version. So what does it really do? When you enter the App Store, all of the apps you provide an update will, let's say, you need to provide this app privacy additional information. So that means you need to, just like on any data policy on a website, for example, you need to provide all the necessary information. What do you track, whether it's on individual user base, whether it's on a device basis, and whether you pass data through your app, for example, to third-party tracking, let's say, services. So in the first place, you thought, okay, that probably only affects Facebook and some other social apps. But since you download and install the Google Chrome browser on your phone, maybe, yeah, it will also affect, of course, your Google Chrome browser. It may also affect any other tool and app and platform you actually use. So that is not only related to Facebook, the overall topic, but for many reasons, Facebook seems to be the one company that is affected the most by this update. So once you provided your app privacy information, you are able to, let's say, offer your app. And if a user downloads your app, the user is asked for permission. We do expect that for whatever let's say, app, whether it's Google Chrome, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, that the acceptance rate for tracking is very, very low, because by default you're opted out. You actively have to opt into, let's say, the tracking mechanics, and the acceptance rate is expected to be far more and far lower than, for example, cookie consent on websites and any other stuff that, let's say, especially Facebook is very afraid of this effect here. Facebook, just to recap it, consists not only on Facebook, but also Instagram, as well as the audience network and Messenger. So Messenger, Instagram, Facebook, everyone is actually familiar with that. But the audience network is basically another monetization platform from Facebook, where they also make basically where you can advertise on, and Facebook, let's say, receives very high ad budgets through the advertisers. So it's very likely that the audience network will not work ever again like this before. So due to those reasons, it's very unlikely that the products from Facebook, the advertising products, work the same way they did before. Apple is also, let's say, introducing this app tracking transparency framework that was announced last summer in 2020. And the app tracking transparency framework also connected to the SCUT network. So that means on the one side, of course, what is tracked, or the data or the information, becomes more transparent for the user as well as for Apple themselves. And all user data which is tracked inside of any app is then passed from the SCUT network back to the original or to the source platform, for example, Facebook advertising platform, Google AdWords, and so on and so on. And I think we can basically skip what happens if a user, let's say, asks of not being tracked. The result is you cannot track them. Yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing we need to discuss. But the other question is, what happens if I allow the tracking? And now you could think, okay, if everyone allows the tracking, then there's basically no impact. But that is absolutely not the case. Even though we can track users in our apps, there's still a huge, let's say, lack of performance data we get shipped between the apps and between the platforms. On the right-hand side, I have a simple graphic, and we will go through an example how it works when you install an app when seeing an ad, and then we will change the scenario over to a Facebook conversion, Facebook catalog sales campaign. So in order to understand this, it's very simple, starting with an app and then go over to, let's say, an e-commerce example. So what you see here is basically just more or less the sketch of the app you have opened, which is at app A, and you see an app basically on app A. So that could be your Facebook app, that could be Google Chrome, that could be Safari, that could be basically anything else, right? So once you see the ad, you basically, the ad receives some sort of signature. Yeah. So the app B, the app you are probably going to download, will receive that signature. And with that signature, basically information is passed from your, let's say, interaction with that ad over to the SCUT network. So let's imagine I click on the ad and I install the app on my phone. Basically, the app is just on my phone. I already received a signal that basically my installation was successful, but other than that, nothing is going to happen. And if I, let's say, open the app and maybe do a purchase inside the app, then some information is exchanged between app B and app A. Yeah, we will talk about, and that is very, very crucial here, about this timer topic a little later. So once again, I see an ad of an app installation campaign. For example, the app B receives this signature, and then I do some interaction, and all of that is actually tracked in an old-fashioned way. So it doesn't seem like a big deal. So the second version we're going to talk is this, let's say, performance campaigns on Facebook, a conversion campaign or a catalog sales campaign. So therefore, we just made up this fictional brand Pumidas. And just imagine you surf on Facebook, and instead of an app ad you see from the brand Pumidas, some apparel, you think about maybe purchasing one of those new shoes or let's say overalls and stuff, and you click on the ad. So the ad also receives this ad signature once more. And instead of the App Store, you basically land on the website, right? So once being on the website, you decide, let's say in the first 7 days, after clicking on the ad, you decide that you would like to purchase a product. Then we can actually easily track the purchase. We do have certain limitations already because not all of the information is passed through like it was before, but we can at least track the purchase of the product. But in the second case, if it takes me longer than 7 days to purchase the product after clicking the ad, I'm no longer able to track that purchase conversion. Again, in this concept, there is this timer, after a certain action has happened. So if I click on the ad and it takes me 8 days or longer to purchase the product, all this information is not passed through from Facebook through the app back to the ads manager, ultimately into the ads reporting. And that is, of course, some sort of a big deal because not only the view conversions are not able to be tracked anymore, which was given in an official statement from Facebook, only the click conversions are being tracked for the time being. And this attribution window is actually very short. I have to admit one more thing. The 7-day click attribution in most cases, especially when it comes to affordable e-commerce products, in the 7-day date range, usually you have, I would say, even 90, maybe 85 to 90% of most conversions. But there are certainly services and products where it takes you far longer to, let's say, attribute the conversion to your audience.
I was going to say, right, that's probably going to be an interesting situation when we talk about like B2B lead conversion, for example, right? Because that, I think, if we see for some of our clients, we see like very, very long turnover periods, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yesterday, we talked with the MarTech team quickly about that because they were talking about those 90 days conversion windows, which you can have on Google Ads. That is not going to happen anymore. So that's a whole different process. Also, we know that basically B2B processes take longer in most cases, but let's say just the quick lead acquisition through Facebook website leads, conversion campaigns, for example, that will not be the same as it used to be. The other impact is also that when the duration of the tracking on certain events, those whether it's Facebook standard or whether it's Facebook custom events, this whole date range is limited. Usually with, let's say, a Facebook pixel on the website, you can track up to the last 180 days or the conversion, let's say, events. So it's actually quite long. And of course, you not only want to create those custom audiences for your different funnel steps in your sales funnel, but also you want to create lookalike audiences in order to scale relevant reach of recent purchases. And that will already, let's say, have a huge effect on those type of audiences. First of all, you cannot really exclude any more purchasers who purchase the product, let's say 7 days after the purchase or longer. And you cannot create those large lookalike audiences anymore, which basically scale your relevant reach. So that might be some sort of a downer here already. Do you
have an idea why, or maybe there's not even an official kind of statement? Do you have an idea why they're reducing it that significantly? I mean, that sounds, it works for maybe some to an extent, but for those special cases, it's going to be really, really hard. So was there any kind of statement as to why they're cutting it down that significantly?
Due to this exact duration, I cannot respond to that. But in the Inc. article, Tim Cook mentioned that this long period of storing data and using it for multiple different types of campaigns basically, let's say more philosophically, leads to chasing a user into a direction and for a long time, let's say, delivering ads which are not always, let's say, nice fashion articles, but also political articles, or political ads. And we will get back into this a little later, but this is the part where I agree and disagree. But yes, it becomes a bit complicated at that stage. This is, I think that's, let's say, the main argument for not having this data stored for too long in order to make use with a lot of different strategies around that. And I think on the user side, if I'm part of a custom audience and a certain party, and I'm somehow technically not able to control this myself in my settings, and I see over and over stuff which maybe changes my mind from the one side to the other side, maybe there's also some sort of psychological research stuff, over time, because you don't change your behavior in the first 7 days, but maybe after half a year, So I think that is more, let's say, the idea behind. And that's basically it.
Got it. So the mainly kind of pushing privacy in a general situation first. Okay.
The timer is a little bit, it varies depending on your campaign. For certain app and store campaigns, the timer can be up to 30 days. For some other campaigns, the timer is only valid for 24 to 48 hours. And in that specific Facebook case, it's 7 days on a click basis. So the timer depends on what Apple decides is more important, basically.
Fair enough.
So that's very interesting. The details can be read through in this article, but cool. It varies. So currently, what does Facebook, and I need to highlight this because on the one side I'm an Apple fanboy and a Facebook fanboy. The question is, can you be both? I try to be both, but I have to highlight that due to those performance marketing issues which will rise, Facebook did a great job in educating us and doing a lot of webinars and being responsive at all points, and handed out a lot of information, PDFs, what you can do. And one of the recent changes you find in your ad account is actually next to your campaign ads hierarchy, the resource center. And the resource center highlights certain issues you do have with your ad sets, with your ads, as well as with some automated routes in order to, let's say, work on your affected campaigns and work on your, let's say, ad account settings in general. So that's why they announced it. And there are also further steps to take, which we find in the solutions overview a little later.
Right.
One of the issues and chaotic things we currently see is that depending on your campaign, here you see that in the middle, that your older ad sets are the legacy ad sets, which are by default attributed to the 28-day click one-day view attribution method, whereas the newer ones already are created as the 7-day click one-day view attribution model reporting. So if you want to compare basically your recent results, the tip would be go into your ads reporting, change your default window either on the account setting or in the ads reporting to 7-day click, one-day view. What you might notice is that there are no one-day view conversions on your conversion or catalog sales campaigns due to the mechanic once the 14.5 update is out. So you will probably only see 7-day click conversion campaigns. Another tip I can give already is actually the tip about if you use Supermetrics to change your default conversion window in your reports, so you don't struggle with any mixed results and stuff, and maybe get your reports up to date. And it's also always good to have different attribution windows activated in order to compare the duration of your customer journey for that. So let's go over to the solutions, and after the solutions, we can talk about, let's say, those 2 articles. That's very nice. I found it again. With that, let's say, latest update, probably the click measurement method becomes the new most advanced technology again when it comes to attribution of your conversion events. And you recently sent me over this webkit.org article, and that's the exact article that was promoted from Apple, and it still says coming soon. So what is it going to do? I think it was W3C together with Apple. They redefine the click measurement method, and what they want to do is that your, let's say, your click source receives the attribution of a certain conversion event back to let's say the click source. And that is actually the goal is to have a certain standard defined and active for websites as well for apps. And the idea behind and the goal is, of course, to secure, let's say, the data of the user, to have it for the user on a very, very private level, to share no individual data, but for performance marketing, to track results. Are your campaigns successful or not? So in simple words, this concept is not live as far as I've seen. It's still in development. I think that is going to be published. I mean, spring could be some more weeks, of course, but it's going to be published very soon after the 14.5 update. And then we probably have a new tracking standard, which is the PCM, or private click measurement standard.
Yeah.
So there are some other things you can do, and we listed this in a, let's say, table overview, sorted by platform and actions you can take. Let's look first on Facebook once more. The only things you actually currently can do is verify your domain for your website and have your SDK updated and integrate Conversions API tracking. Conversions API tracking is pushed by Facebook, since May last year, very much. Before it was the server-side tracking, so they renamed this. And we are also working on processes on how to integrate Conversions API tracking the easiest and fastest way. Currently, there's a method using the server-side Google Tag Manager technology for this. And then there are certain templates from, let's say, the gurus of Google Tag Managers, which are very helpful in order to get your server-side tracking done. But I have to admit, that is already a level which is hard for the regular, even advanced, let's say, social advertising manager that needs some sort of understanding of scripts and tracking mechanisms and how all that server stuff works. What is the difference? All the data is tracked on the server where your website is stored, and not, let's say, everything that happens in your browser, which would be client-based.
On the client side,
So I'm not so deep into it yet, but that is basically one of the solutions. Also, it was mentioned that, basically cookie tracking, client-based tracking is a thing of the past. So that's why we need to go that way and we need to adapt. So that made me also feel like in like 2015, 2014, when people, let's say, figured out this dynamic retargeting, remarketing, and how those dynamic properties and objects work in the pixel. And now we are back on this level, but with Conversions API, and now we need to learn it again. I assume, because we are all forced to do that we need to, let's say, adapt quickly and then learn it, and then it's actually one of the standard procedures you implement yourself. We were also in exchange with LinkedIn, but there's not so much official data about the iOS 14 and the update. So basically, there's nothing you really find, no hands-on guide. There's some sort of information when it comes to Twitter. You basically need to reduce and limit your ad groups and your campaigns, because one thing that's important, you are limited to up to 8 events on Facebook, which you can track. So standard or custom events, which can be view content, purchase, initiate checkout, and all that stuff. And this limitation, I don't want to mention the sources yet, but one source said the limitation is on Apple's side because the SCAD network API does not provide more than 8 events to be shipped from the SCAD network to, for example, the Facebook network. And another source said the machine learning algorithm, which in the future will then predict and attribute, let's say, conversions to your campaigns, cannot process more than 8 of those events currently. So we do have, let's say, again, 2 different sites here with 2 different, let's say, assumptions. I cannot tell you what's true right now. The only thing that's true is you are limited with up to 8 events. On the other hand, if you have integrated those 8 events perfectly on your website, you are actually quite fine. So it's not that you cannot track anything. Well-written 8 events on your website, for example, or on your app are already enough. Snapchat also did a good job when it comes to this, let's say, process and about some instructions for your takeaways for the, let's say, for the Snapchat app. So it's mostly related to the SDK. TikTok also announced, let's say, a quick guide. It's, let's say, to put this into comparison to the other, let's say, networks. Facebook has delivered the most, let's say, activities and solutions you can do. And for the other platforms, it becomes much simpler just because of the technology they have behind. And not everything is tracked as dynamic as it is on Facebook. So therefore, it is a little bit limited, but that can be also a good thing in order to implement that.
I think it's kind of true what they're saying, right? I mean, Facebook being the data company in that regard, and then also I think in fairness, if you compare to something like, and I don't want to say that in a negative way, but like if you compare to something like TikTok, which is just much younger, obviously there's just way less things in place in general, as you said, ad formats, and therefore I suppose also checking types and whatnot. So I imagine it's also a bit from that perspective, right?
Yeah, I have to admit, when you look into the TikTok Business Center, it looks very familiar to, for example, the Facebook Business Manager.
I think you mentioned that once,
I assume that there must be at least one decision maker who said, wait with that conversion API stuff. Let's see what Facebook does, and then we implement the same, because there's the TikTok pixel and the interface looks familiar. So I'm sure they just wait for basically what the big company does, and then they will adapt as quickly as possible. There's basically no, let's say, information from Pinterest and Reddit sites, and I have to admit, Google Ads so far got away with that very, very easy with that iOS 14 update. My assumption, even though I never did PPC campaigns, my assumption is that your PPC campaigns can still work really good, because when you have a very nice keyword strategy and you have your bidding concept behind, and if the user finds what he's looking for, probably the same counts for SEO, then you will get your traffic and you will get your results. But that's more of a pull mechanic, and all the social platforms are a push mechanic, and there it's of course a lot different, especially with the targeting. Yeah, and Bing is the one company, no information available, and together with LinkedIn being the only social network GDPR, let's say, conform, they don't have, let's say, anything to say about that. Currently, you can see in the media coverage who's the bad guy in that situation, who's the good guy. So that's a big thing. But we get to this. Maybe worth to mention, you have it already in your in this let's say in this message in the stream, that you can get and see this overview on our blog post. So feel free to click through all the helpful links and topics, and feel free to get back to us if you have a question about one of those measurements and mechanics. All right, then I would say let's jump over to 2 articles I have found in the last couple of days. The first one is from Wired. There again, it was mentioned that basically, Facebook and the technology and the data collection they do and create, that this is, let's say, a big deal for Apple. I also noticed that Apple shifted a heavy way from being just a cool lifestyle company with all products to a very data safe, individual user data safe company. So that is definitely a narrative they followed in the last, probably at least last 2 years. One of the measurements they did, for example, I think was the iOS 14 update. It was even when it was the new 14 update, that you can have, let's say, your Apple login, which is just a fake email address and stuff for certain apps. So you can use apps without providing real data, things like that. And when you look back into the past for, I think, at least 5 years, maybe a little longer, you were able to go into the iPhone settings and connect your Facebook profile in the iPhone settings itself. And what happened is that it pulled and pushed data from your friends into your contact list, including birthday and all that stuff. I still have this data left over on my phone, and I get multiple times reminded that a certain person I have basically no contact to has a birthday. I have no clue how to turn it off, but I just accept it.
Right.
So this feature was eliminated several years ago. I remember that it was just suddenly erased, and all of those fancy lifestyle, let's say, settings, basically changed. One statement Tim Cook does here is basically that Facebook sits on so much data that they make money with. Apple sits on a lot of data as well, but they decided to not make money out of the data using advertising. Now you could say Apple search ads, isn't it advertising? Yeah, but it's basically it's a search bar. So if you search for something and someone bids on this, you find it. So they don't relate those Apple search ads, for example, to interest, behavior, and other mechanics which are available on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
The second article, it is
that was a good headline. I like that one. Yeah.
That's why, of course, I just had to stop when I saw it in the ad, and I read through all of that. And there's, let's say, the speech goes a lot longer, but he is talking about the algorithm, which can be used, of course, organically, as well as with paid ads, as well as with tracking data. And he is, let's say, pointing out that they don't want to, let's say, provide a downward spiral that recommends, in a very political example, someone who is maybe slightly on the right wing side to see even more hateful content, to become more hateful on that side, and maybe becomes more extreme in his opinion. And I have to admit, that is, let's say, personally and professionally, one of the things I 100% understand and let's say support. So there are changes which need to be made in this whole social setup, no matter which platform it is, basically.
I was gonna say that's platform independent. I agree. That's true for all of them, right?
Yeah. The more you look into one direction, the deeper you go that way. The concept of retargeting, remarketing, and all the smart advertisers. It's more than 1 million advertisers only on Facebook. So that's one of the results. And the final statement I wanted to point out this one. You are the product. Yeah. So if you don't sell anything, if you use the product, then you are the product. This is, for example, something I do not completely agree with. Yeah. I agree with that your data becomes a product advertisers can use in order to ideally sell very nice services, very nice products to the right person. Yeah, because that is actually the idea behind regular marketing, the way we do it and know it. On the other hand, when you look at what Facebook delivers as free products, which is Facebook, Instagram, all the lifestyle around, creating fancy images, filters, presenting yourself, and the need and basically desire for connection and communication, then there is, let's say, a huge variety of apps Facebook made available for people all over the world. Yeah, and those apps improved for many people the life, basically. I know there are a lot of counter arguments. For example, a certain person who I think she was very skinny and then starved to death because looking perfectly on Instagram. Those examples are, of course, very extreme, and this is not what I'm talking about when I mean those type of examples. Yeah. Also, I don't mean those examples like in Myanmar, where the pre-installed Facebook app led to a huge hate against Muslim people in Myanmar, I think Rohingya, and this, let's say, algorithm disaster, more or less. Yeah. So this is what I don't support with it, but I support that, for example, in China, using darknet and the other possibilities, they are able to publish content on Facebook in order to show how it really is in China or how it really is in North Korea. Yeah. So there are possibilities and good chances for this platform. And it's a platform which is growing. There's no other platform in this huge Facebook universe that is larger than this currently on the user side. And it, of course, just like any society, it can be extreme in many different ways. But in general, it's mostly positive if I look at this,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that would be basically my statement here.
No, I see where you're coming from. I mean, at the end of the day, like it's a bit like that. The advertisement is, I think, in your take, is kind of a currency that you pay for the fact that you actually get, as you said, in a lot of cases at least, a benefit from using an app which essentially is free, right? This is kind of what you're saying, and I can see where you're coming from. I think the one point that I'm not fully sure if it was in this article or another one actually that I read a couple of them, but it said that where Tim Cook said, well, like it should be possible to do advertisement, and we have been doing that in the past a lot without the crazy amount of data and the targeting options. And I guess that is somewhat true. You could also counter argue that obviously, well, with more data you can do more precise ads. So I guess it's a two-sided sword. It's not only the one direction, but I can totally see that, well, from where he stands, that Facebook does too much with the data, which I guess Zuckerberg would argue the different way. But as you said correctly, there's two different product worlds here. So there will be this. I expect this battle to kind of certainly continue from both sides, right? The one is going to be doing this, the other one is going to be doing that. I think this is something that we will be.
Good point, definitely. And as you can see, there are certain topics which are basically absolutely no issue on the feed. For example, if you have a very nice cafe, but no one really discovers it, and through your keyword, through your hashtag strategy, through the content you produce, and some euros and you spend on advertising to reach people in your area, basically it boosts, let's say, the visibility of a certain cafe, and makes it very local. Also, this advertising effort you put in. But yes, if it is on a level that goes far beyond what it was actually built for, then things are going to go down this way. For example, when we talked, I think it was the 2016 election, there were multiple hundred thousands, even million versions of different ads available through the political parties. So from my opinion, a lot of that pushes back to political purpose when it comes to advertising, or political problem when it comes to advertising. And Facebook reacted to limit the amount of ads in order to not, let's say, create infinite versions until the one message fits to the user who sees it and then is finally convinced with a certain topic. So ad limitations is a thing Facebook took action on. It's rolled out over the last couple of weeks and becomes necessary, I think, in just 2 days for all accounts. So there we have already some limitations. Facebook also did restrictions when there was this Cambridge Analytica scandal. This restrictions when there's GDPR. But one of the things which is also worth to mention, it seems like that, and that shows again, does a company has more power than a government? When there was GDPR, we all were like, oh my God, GDPR drive us crazy. How do we track our performance? After some weeks or after some months, basically nothing really changed. We're fine with that. User can accept and do the update and no issues. But then there's Apple who says all ad performance goes through our network. And now everyone is really afraid of that. Even Zuckerberg himself, that is a huge different topic here. So that also shows the impact from Apple to the whole industry, especially to a specific network here.
Yeah, very true, especially due to the significant reach of the operating system, right? I mean, this is it's a bit comparable, I would say. And if you look at that's shifting as well. But if you look at the browser distribution on the web, where we have this significant, share of the Chrome browser, right? It's kind of the same story. I mean, Google does literally the same when they push out new tech, right? So this, let's say, web performance is a topic that we talk about quite a lot right now. I mean, you guys do as well, but if you look at it from an SEO perspective again, when they want to politically drive something now with the kind of user experience update, which to at least an extent consists of web performance, then it's quite simple. If you're the browser vendor and you sit on top of everything, it doesn't matter how the search results look like. You basically just put in a notification or even just a small icon or something saying, well, this is fast, or you would say, well, this is slow, so you downgrade it. So it's essentially the same way, not necessarily on the tracking front, but at least in the impact, as if you control such a large, let's say, share of user base, however they connect through an app, through an operating system, through a browser, right? It's somewhat, I mean, we have seen those plays in the past by, specifically Google, obviously, Or back in the day with, if you recall, Microsoft and the pre-installed Internet Explorer, which was the same story essentially. They just shipped it with the operating system. Was the default. The search engine was set to something. I mean, this is the same story. Like whenever the entry point is controlled, I imagine that's with a certain reach, like becoming a problem in quotation marks at least. Yeah.
Yeah, there was also said that it was a while ago that Safari is the new Internet Explorer, but they made it very good with the security of the user when browsing the web, and with the security settings you can activate on your mobile and on your Mac OS, for example, and that basically lifted this feeling of, let's say, making use of the Safari browser once more as your default browser, because now you're aware of that Google tracks so much more, and also you don't really have to use, let's say, the Firefox browser anymore. Not saying it's a bad one, but if you can use your Safari perfectly integrated Mac OS or iPhone OS browser there is no need to have another browser. So I think then the strategy going along with this, let's say, security, tracking, data policy direction goes through many different channels, the browser itself, the operating system on mobile, and sooner or later on the, let's say, Mac OS system anyways, is a long path to, let's say, communicate this data security topic here.
However, I think right now still, like, I do agree, but what I think also is like what you can see in those patterns is that the ease of use just simply wins, right? Because I would argue the same way for Android, right? Like I don't even bother to change my browser. I mean, the Chrome browser is so well integrated, and like, you know, it comes with like this thing to my desktop and all of this nonsense. Like it just works out of the box. I just log in once and that's about it, right? I mean, I think this is the same. I think, Dominic, you are also an Apple user, right? But like, or at least an iPhone user in this case. But like, especially for those that are like on full scale, like the Mac environment, it's kind of the same story, right? It's just ease of use wins. Like, even though we should be, and I think we are, but like I would say the average user, maybe even less so, is not that aware of like all this tracking situation, etc., going on behind the scenes. So I think like, but as long as it's, the one thing is the easiest one, they will always, well, the majority, let's say, will go for that, right? Which is understandable, like, because people are somewhat lazy, and like what works out of the box works out of the box, right?
Yeah, you don't question it, you just use it, and all those settings are, after just a month of using it, there's too much to transition from the one browser to the other one, and then on mobile, and then whatever.
So I mean, in that way, you could actually argue that Apple does somewhat the right thing, because if like the user doesn't change it proactively, because I mean, they could have done it in the past, right? They could have just said, well, there's no tracking prevention, but let's go to like a incognito browser situation. Like, you know, there are some out there that have like very limited settings and tracking and whatnot. They could have done that, just no one is doing that, right? This is the point. So actually it is, well, at least part of it is maybe a responsible way of doing that somewhat in the background. And I'm not, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's the right way to do it. And I'm very, very aware that this is certainly also politically driven, and it's, you know, it's maybe even revenue driven, because they are a stock company. So there's certain, I guess, things to it, but at least there's one argument, I think, that says, well, then if people don't do it, and we feel that way, and that they need protection, then we need to do it on a default level, which I can see where they're coming from.
And when you take that into contrast of the other GAFA companies, then Apple positions itself as very, let's say, data conform, data protective, whereas Google, Facebook, and Amazon, the whole business is based on the data and the usage. So that is also very nice. And the momentum with the election. So imagine there was, I mean, we have looked at this, I think, in November and October. What is the ad spend of Biden party and Trump party? I think we were at 230 million altogether at that point already. So you know that there's a lot of ad spend only on that platform. And imagine there's another scandal like it was with Cambridge Analytica. That would give Apple an even higher momentum of advertising. Hey, we don't use your data for anything. We just build nice products, and you use them, and we don't track and sell your data.
And let's be very honest. I mean, you just had on a side note, which is a very funny point. Like, companies such as Amazon don't have the luxury to do that. I mean, if you have seen the earnings report just a couple of days ago, the amount of turnover that they get from revenue from advertisements, and we all know about Google and how bad it is there. They can't take this stance. Like, if they would just kill off their main data source, they would be insane. Like, why would they do that? So they rather squeeze on that front, and then there's not that many with a reach or a significance as an Apple to even do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They are still those physical products company, and it works. Over time, all, let's say, digital companies with services must actually be more valuable than, for example, an Apple, but that's not the case. Still not yet.
Not yet. However, I'm really surprised to see there's some data companies popping up left, right, and center these days, right? Like, Snowflake and how they all call Palantir and whatnot.
Yeah.
The valuations that they have right now due to the momentum of data process, just absolutely ridiculous. So I mean, it's actually good counterbalance to have someone like an Apple, but also potentially others. Good guy. Well, I wouldn't go as far as that, but I can see where you're coming from. Yeah, I think it's fair enough as an Apple fanboy to call them good guy Apple. That's fine. That
too
works.
Much.
Yeah, a bit too much. Anyhow, Paul, super exciting stuff. Thank you very much.
Yeah, super
highly
interesting.
Appreciate the summary. Kind of curious. I think we should do a follow-up at the point when we see a bit more and we have some data to share. See what the implications were when I would say, like, we follow the rollout, and obviously we're gonna push this on social so that everyone who's we had, I think it was probably the most watched episode today, at least looking at the viewers count. Meanwhile, so I'm kind of curious. We push it out on social afterwards, so that's gonna be quite cool. Quick 2 housekeeping things. Dominique, Digital PR Summit is this week, right?
Yeah,
you
it's this week on Thursday.
On Thursday, and tickets are free, right?
Tickets are still available. Not that much anymore, but they are still available and for free, completely. Just a whole day, just about digital PR, a bit of link building, outreach approaches, content, international content strategies. So super interesting, great lineup. Don't miss it. I think we should share that again in our on our notes and our summary.
Notes.
Yeah. Great.
And with that, we're already at the 5 o'clock spot. So well done. And I think we just use this opportunity before we start with something else and get lost in time again to just say goodbye. Thanks for dialing in. Much appreciated. And we will be back next week. On Tuesday, 4 p.m. German time with another episode of PKs on Air. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for dialing in. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.